Welcome to this week's episode of Seize the Data. We're so excited to have our guest, Amir, joining us. He is the VP of Business Intelligence at First Citizens Bank. But before I mess up your background, I guess, Amir, we'd love just you to take us through kind of your career journey of how you got to this role, what you're doing today, and walk us through that if you can.
Thanks, Logan. Appreciate it. An honor to be here. So I first started my career in the investment management space, graduated 2011 with a degree in business economics and a minor in management from UC Irvine. Of course, we were still suffering from the great financial crisis. It was tough to find jobs. So essentially, I took anything that I could. And I first started my career out in client reporting at a firm down in Newport Beach called PIMCO, Pacific Investment Management Company. It's an investment manager that's primarily focused on fixed income securities. And I was doing client reporting, and then ultimately my role changed into more so a product marketing and sales marketing role. And then from there, it actually transformed into a marketing operations, more technical role. So I had the fun job of evaluating third-party content and sales enablement platforms to ultimately bring our product and marketing materials into the 21st century. And then during that time, towards my tail end of my career, I ultimately decided, to get my MBA. And thankfully, I was accepted into UC Berkeley Haas School of Business. And I was doing my MBA part-time. So I was working full-time in Southern California at PIMCO. And then on Friday nights, thankfully, my wife would drop me off at the airport. She'd give me a ride. Yeah. I would fly up to the Bay Area. I would stay at my buddy's place. Thankfully, he gave me a place to stay. So I stayed a bunch on hotels. And then I would do class all day Saturday. And then Saturday nights, networking, going out with my cohorts. And then Sunday, flying back in the morning. And then basically catching up on all the chores, everything that I do, and then meal prep for the rest of the week. So I started my MBA program in 2018. Thankfully, I was able to do my core curriculum with my cohort during the first year in person. And then unfortunately, COVID hit towards the end of 19 and in 2020. So then my program ended up going fully remote. In hindsight, it was a blessing. I think I was dying toward halfway through my career, through my program, working full time in SoCal and then traveling up to the Bay, then coming back down for work. So during that time, I was still working at PIMCO, doing marketing operations. And then halfway through my MBA program, ultimately decided to see what else is out there, started interviewing with a bunch of firms in the Bay Area, ultimately got a job at Charles Schwab, corporate in downtown SF in their investor services group. Towards the end of 2019, they were like, hey, COVID, or toward the end of 2020, they're like, hey, COVID's going to die down. We need everybody to come back to the office in 2021. They're like, you need to move. So I was like, okay, sure. Day after Christmas, my wife and I, on 12/26/2020, we packed the U-Haul. We drove all the way up to the Bay Area. We got settled in. January 1st, 2021, Charles Schwab was like, yeah, COVID's still full-fledged. Nobody has to come into the office. Everybody's still remote. And I was like, okay, great. So didn't really have to move. But, in hindsight, it was the best thing for not only my personal growth and development, but also for my career. So during Charles Schwab, one of my business school classmates who was working at Silicon Valley Bank at the time, he's like, hey, we got this cool business strategy, business intelligence growth role within the private bank. You'll be working closely with the senior leadership and executive leadership team to build out analytics and data visualizations to track the health and trajectory of the products and client growth within the private bank. You interested? And I was like, yeah, sounds amazing. Let's do it. Interviewed, got the job in September 2021. Been at Silicon Valley Bank, now First Citizens Bank, ever since. And in that role, I was doing more so business strategy and growth. So I was putting together monthly business reviews, quarterly business reviews, presenting those to the senior leadership team, and then figuring out if we're not moving up and to the right. Ultimately, how can we course correct? Whether that's shifting capacity internally due to macroeconomic trends, or whether that's launching a new product to make us more competitive in the marketplace relative to other regional banks, or whether that's launching different types of relationship pricing models for certain segments of our client base, where we ultimately reward loyalty and retain assets by giving them a certain discount on their line of credit if they bring in a certain amount of net new assets. So I was doing that for about a year and a half, 2 years. And then ultimately the bank collapsed. I'm sure you've heard, and everybody else.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. Crazy times. I have another story on that, by the way, but we'll get to that later. And
Okay.
then First Citizens Bank thankfully came in and stepped in. I got absorbed into the wealth finance and technology team. So my current manager wanted me to focus on more BI and analytics and data visualization capabilities and responsibilities. So that's primarily what I focus on now. And I tell people I have the fun job of consolidating data from multiple disparate solutions to build out the analytics and data visualization, leveraging our BI tool Tableau, to track growth and progress of our products and client base within our three different business units within the wealth organization. So I assess the health and trajectory of our deposits business, our lending business, and our wealth management business within First Citizens Wealth. And that's ultimately a little background of my career and how I came into the role that I'm in today.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for walking through that. I feel like we have way more overlap than I expected. I think we talked about it, but a lot of our kind of early founding journey at Datalogs had a little bit to do with PIMCO. I guess I can't go too much into the details there.
Yeah.
I guess you did your MBA at Berkeley Haas, and I guess a couple years later we were at Berkeley doing Skydeck,
Yeah.
commuting back and forth from New York
Right.
City and staying at Airbnbs without much kind of funding for Datalogs, kind of burning our bank accounts dry. But ended up surviving there. I can feel your pain on that commute. Guess you got kind of saved by COVID, but yeah, the whole move, then Charles Schwab, Bay Area, and then I guess just you're remote and like no real reason, but it sounds like I guess you're still in the Bay, so everything kind of worked its magic to how you envisioned.
Still in the Bay. I live across San Francisco, so I'm in uptown Oakland. It actually, in hindsight, was a blessing because right now, everything AI is hot. I'm in the center of it, attending a lot of industry events, conference events, a lot of summits in person. So it's good to definitely be here. You definitely feel the energy and the buzz. I'm sure you can speak to that as well, what you have going on at Datalogs.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it feels like, I guess we're in New York City, but similarly, it's like nonstop AI action, AI events. But I guess we're always trying to refocus the market of like, hey, the kind of classic garbage in, garbage out, but you need the foundations. And a big part of this is BI is how do you enable the next wave of kind of AI analytics and initiatives? But I am curious to kind of dive in. You mentioned there was an interesting point on the bank collapse. And I think that's always interesting to talk about.
Yeah.
I remember reading an article that it was like, this was kind of mask and different reporting issues. A lot of it was in BI. And that was one of the reasons it was surfaced late. I don't know if you can pin it all on like, hey, this is a business intelligence quality issue. But I remember like, I think one of our team members actually wrote a blog post based on something someone shared socially. No clue if it was factual or what. But yeah, I'd love to hear your story there on the collapse.
It definitely wasn't on the BI side.
Okay.
I would say it's more so on the risk side and the forecasting side. Essentially, we didn't forecast how fast the Fed was going to increase rates, and of course, we didn't position appropriately. But I'll just leave it there. But in terms of on the BI side, what's really interesting is, so I was in the private bank, and at the beginning of 23, so one of the concerns towards the end of 22 was deposit outflows. And at the beginning of 23, I was tasked with tracking weekly deposit flows within solely the private bank. So, I was consolidating data from our enterprise data warehouse, from Salesforce, from our core deposit system, from multiple places, and then basically tracking weekly deposit flows across the private bank. And I was working closely with our financial consultants, to generate qualitative insights because they're talking directly to our clients. They're hearing why they're doing outflows of deposits. Some of it was primarily taxes. Some of it was distributions because of a lot of our clients are PE, VC investors. So there were reasons why there were net outflows, as well as other firms had competitive rates on the deposits. So some people were moving there. So we were tracking that, and every single week I was presenting this report to the executive leadership team within the private bank. And I would say every week was essentially net outflows. There was maybe like one week where we had net inflow, but it was net outflow. And then I was like, okay, this is going to be a problem soon, and this is just within the private bank. It's not on the commercial bank where we have the majority of our deposits. within the entire bank. But, you know, it was interesting seeing it in real time because I didn't think the scale of it and the ramifications of all these outflows were going to be ultimately a bank collapse. Um,
Right.
yeah. But it was interesting to tell people like, hey, I was actually tracking it. I was, trying to surface insights around it, qualitative insights. But unfortunately, we weren't proactive or didn't take the necessary actions, to prevent this collapse. But there are also factors outside of our control, that led to it. I believe there were some people in the industry, not going to name anybody, but they somewhat fear mongering, spreading severe liquidity issues, solvency issues, ultimately caused a bank run. So it was a series of unfortunate events that ultimately came together and caused this storm, so to say.
Right.
But yeah, it's just always interesting when I tell people like, yeah, I was kind of tracking it. And ultimately, the bank collapsed. But
Yeah. I can't imagine like being in those meetings, but I guess it's impossible to connect the dots because you haven't lived through a bank collapse or situation. But I guess so next time you start seeing a spike in outflows is like, hey, we're measuring this. Is I guess you connect the dots way earlier and maybe able to predict it.
Yeah, and then I mean, I was only tracking one aspect of outflows. It's just like the quantitative aspect of it, just seeing the numbers go out and then trying to couple that with some qualitative insights. But I mean, that was like, as you said, that's only one aspect of the entire picture. You just can't look at it in a vacuum. You got to factor in all these other factors that come into play that just based on experience and like what you don't know, it's impossible to forecast and predict. But yeah, next time, if I'm ever in that situation, I'll have some better insights.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully there's some AI model that gives you a heads up.
There you go.
Way before it was happening. Awesome. But yeah, I guess switching gears a little bit, I'd love to talk a little bit more kind of about, I guess, the BI aspect of your role. And I think in the industry, kind of the last 6 months, like so much stuff has been focused on AI, or AI is going to completely replace analytics. And I think that's just not the reality of what is happening at most enterprises today. So I'd love to hear kind of your thoughts on like, why is BI such a critical foundation still? And will it be for the next 5 years? Are you seeing changes where you think, hey, BI is ultimately going away?
I do not think BI will ever go away. I think the way of producing AI or BI, excuse me, so many AIs, BI, CI, DI.
DI is a good one. We had a long decision intelligence conversation today.
Oh, there you go.
And
nice.
Someone was like, wait, I thought DI was data intelligence.
Yeah. I mean, it could mean so many things, decision intelligence.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I don't think BI will ever go away. It just the way of how enterprises and people tackle BI and produce BI will ultimately transform with AI. And I think AI, what I've seen is AI has helped myself produce data visualizations or analytics a lot faster and get out our BI to market a lot quicker and more impactful. Yeah. And instead of me spending time understanding trends, talking to different people to understand why something is contributing or detracting to growth, there are agentic analytic capabilities that will ingest all the context of an enterprise, assess the trends, and then provide qualitative insights in terms of what it thinks is contributing or detracting to growth. And that's a huge value add because it saves not only my capacity and my team's capacity, but it also gives us something to react to and ideas that we may not have necessarily thought about that are potentially contributing or detracting to growth. So in short, BI is not going to go away. Just the way enterprises address BI will definitely transform thanks to AI capabilities.
Yeah, I think you brought up kind of two really interesting points. One is just that development cycle and time. And then second being is, okay, these kind of AI created analytics, I guess, on top of that data foundation that already exists. So I guess on the first point of just development time, how have you seen your development time shift over the last 2 years? Is it like what used to take a month takes a week? Are we kind of prompt engineering dashboards now and you can crank out 120 minutes if you have the right stakeholder request? Or what does that actually look like for citizens?
I wouldn't say a month to a week at this point, maybe a month to 2 weeks. So the time has definitely been cut in half. Yeah. And then what I've seen is it's decreased the learning curve for new people or new business users to learn how to build out and self-serve and build their own visualization and analytics for their own business needs. So it's not so much like I have a ton of requests and it's helping me be more efficient in terms of building things out and getting things to market. It's also making other people within the business who aren't as tech savvy or have the hard skills to build out the visualizations, make them more efficient and decrease the learning curve for them to build out their own analytics and visualizations to self-service their own business needs.
Okay.
So that's pretty much, how I've experienced it.
Got it. Yeah, because I guess when I was working in kind of day-to-day BI development, I guess it was a few years ago now, the requirements gathering and trying to figure out what the stakeholders actually want was always the longest part. And there was like this iteration cycle. And like back then, like sure, developing it, I'd have to lock myself in a week to build MVP 1, but then it's going back, hey, feedback, well, you're way off. That's not what I said at all. And that iteration cycle. But I guess if that business stakeholder can create things themselves, you're cutting out that development cycle or cutting at least the timeline down.
Yeah, exactly. Which is good, but ultimately I'm still seeing them come back to me with the feedback, and they're like, it's like I got too much on my plate. Can you just handle it? So, but it's definitely there's a lot of change management and like best practices and adoption that has to occur across the entire enterprise. It's good to see that people are excited about it, but it's definitely going to take time for people to adopt. But I do agree with you. In the traditional way, the business requirements and the gathering and the iteration and the feedback is the most time intensive and labor intensive part of the entire process. But I don't know if the solution's out there. I personally haven't seen any AI technology or capabilities help with that process. But that would be interesting to see, instead of all the business stakeholders provide me with the feedback and then I have to take all the notes and adjust the visualization accordingly. It'd be great to see if I could just produce an MVP in this solution and then send a link out or socialize that MVP, and then the end users on their own time could go in it and then type their notes and requirements and feedback, and then it adjusts the visualization automatically on the fly. I don't know if there's anything out there in the marketplace that could do that, or if the technology is, that advanced to be at that place, but that'd definitely be something very interesting to see in the future.
Right. Yeah, I feel like the technology has to be there at this point. Like just looking at like the OpenAI Sora videos and I guess all the kind of lovables of the world of, hey, type what you want and we'll build an app in minutes. But I guess like where all these things kind of fail is like the nuances. Like I was playing around with Sora over the weekend. It was like, hey, make a video of me crossing the finish line at a marathon. And it looked great, but then like one of my arms was just missing still. I was like, this is like the latest, greatest AI model. And like, why am I a 1.5 arm person here? But I guess like on the BI and analytics side, like I think like spinning up a new dashboard is easy, but then it's how do you make sure all the data, the modeling, that foundation is ultimately accurate and serving needs there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the context aspect is of equal importance, because I mean, if the model doesn't have the institutional knowledge or background of your specific enterprise, then it's gonna turn out like slop or whatever it's called, and nothing relevant to what you're working on.
Exactly. Yeah, and we're from a data logs perspective, like our customers are seeing an average BI content growth rate around 60% year over year.
Nice.
So the amount of new BI creation, and I guess we have some historical data, but I'd say not a large enough critical mass to say like, hey, at this point when AI became available in BI, this skyrocketed versus kind of like this natural growth. But then like on the flip side, most of our customers are saying 70 to 90% of assets in BI are unused for 6+ months. Wow. So it's like these environments are being filled with more and more things, but then the amount of just junk or things just, hey, spun up one project. And like a lot of times it doesn't matter, but it's like you leave the refresh schedule on, or it's floating out there and someone else comes to view it. But now we're seeing the problem is like, okay, you attach a AI model on top of BI that doesn't have the context of this was a one-time project someone just spun up and built, wasn't intended to be used. Now that's being indexed by AI to make that agentic decision you were talking about of servicing trends. And it's like this big, like, how do you handle that junk? I'm curious, that's something you're dealing with today, of kind of junk in the analytics environments?
Yeah, we're definitely experiencing that. So prior to First Citizens Bank acquiring Silicon Valley Bank, their analytics was used through Cognos. It's like IBM's
Okay.
analytics data visualization tool. Yeah, and from what I understood, they had about 1,000 dashboards on Cognos. Out of those, I don't know how many are being used. I'm assuming probably over 50% aren't being used. People over time have just stood that up and probably just, it's become outdated or nobody has used it. And then on the legacy Silicon Valley Bank side, we heavy Tableau users. There are also some Power BI users. So as you can see, we have different multiple solutions for BI and analytics, and then just cleaning up that entire process, consolidating it, figuring out, what's the tool of choice. And ultimately, if we go with one tool, then we're going to have to lift and shift dashboards from another tool and all that stuff. So that's a whole initiative in itself. And that's something where we need help. And of course, looking to you at Data Eyes to help us streamline that process and make it more efficient for us over here.
Yeah, of course. We always excited, and I guess those multi-tool environments, it's so common for companies where it's like Power BI, Tableau, plus Cognos or another tool. I'm curious, like the reasoning behind you all having this multi-tool environment. Is it just different business users bought tools over time and this is just the reality? Or was it like intentional, hey, we don't want to have all of our eggs in the basket with Salesforce, Tableau, we need to diversify here?
No, it's more so the former.
Okay.
Yeah, more so the former. Just people at different times throughout the life cycle have been like, hey, let's just use this. In the meantime, new people have joined the firm and they're like, hey, based on my past experience, this works better. Power BI was basically, we're a Microsoft shop here, so it was just offered through Microsoft tool of suites. So just figuring out in terms of what's like the most intuitive and effective tool, as well as how does that fit within the entire ecosystem of tools that we have. So on the legacy SBB side, we were a Salesforce shop as well. So we were like, okay, Tableau is native to Salesforce. There's easy integration, things of that nature. So that's why we were more Tableau related in terms of our BI on the legacy SVB side.
Okay, got it. Yeah, it's interesting. We're seeing like right now this big push to consolidate. And I don't know if it's really driven by kind of IT budgets of, hey, we want to shrink, or is it just the overhead to manage multiple tools? But it feels like every company is dealing with that right now.
Right. And and it is, I'll tell you, it is a multitude of factors. It's not simply just like cost and ROI of this tool. It's around like adoption, level of effort in terms of building out analytics in one tool versus another, integration of one BI tool with other platforms, things of that nature.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think switching gears a little bit, I'd love to talk a little bit more about kind of the business impact and ROI and how you measure it for analytics and BI. I think we hear all the time that like maybe it's IT tooling or just BI is like, it can be viewed as a cost center. But I think the reality is like all these analytics, like they empower so many decisions at the enterprise. Is like, how do you flip that inside the organization and really view it as like, hey, this is a revenue generating function, or it is impacting the bottom line of kind of what we do as a business. So I love your takes of like, you have to go to, I guess, your boss, or maybe it's someone on the commercial banking side and justify, hey, this is something we need to double our investment over a year. Here's the business impact. How do you think about that as kind of a BI analytics leader? And is that a hard conversation to have?
It's not so much a hard conversation to have. Leaders across the enterprise understand the importance of BI and analytics. Because I'll give you an example. We recently launched at the beginning of this year a relationship pricing program. So this is for a certain segment of our clients within the wealth organization. If they open up a line of credit or a new private loan, and if they bring in a certain amount of qualified net new assets, we would give them relationship pricing on that line of credit. In order to track that program and that portfolio and the assets that it's bringing in and how it's impacting, our clients, we need to build out, some business intelligence around it, some analytics to track trends, to track assets that are coming in. So each quarter, we've been assessing the impact of the net new assets that have been coming in from this program. And then, of course, that trickles down to the bottom line and how much, revenue and net income is being generated by our wealth organization based on this program. So I think any product that launches, any program that launches, any strategic initiative that launches, I mean, you can't just determine the success and the health of it just by gut feel and like hearing qualitative anecdotal feedback. You definitely need hard numbers, you need data, you need KPIs, you need metrics to really see how much, business value it's driving and what the true or, directionally correct ROI is.
Mhm.
And the only way to do that is to leverage BI, analytics, data visualization, because with the numbers, nobody could be like, I'm thinking maybe is 75% contribution to the bottom line. Well, okay, let's look at the dashboard. Let's pull up the numbers, and actually, it's like 60%. So numbers don't
Right.
lie, and the only way to track ROI is through like BI, analytics, and like data-driven insights.
Mhm. Exactly. Yeah, I love that. I feel like ultimately to like, anything inside a company is you need to measure. And if you're not proactively measuring, scoring the impact, is how do you know you're getting the right results? And
Right.
I guess, is it your role and your function then to kind of interpret, make the plan, adjust of, hey, we need to change X about the business? Or do you view your role as more as like, hey, my goal is to support these business users to create it? I'm just curious how much kind of direction guidance you're able to influence from the BI perspective to the business.
I'd say it's a combo of the two.
Okay.
So in terms of this like relationship pricing program, I'm more so surfacing insights to the leadership team of that program, and then they're course correcting where they see fit. However, I also have the ability to see like what's working with certain strategic initiatives and then provide my own recommendations in terms of like, hey, this relationship pricing model on the loan side, why don't we leverage this program and apply it on the deposit side and the wealth side? So for example, with rates going down, you would forecast that deposits would flow out, we would have outflows and it would move to equities to get a higher yield. um, why don't we initiate a program similar to the loan side where if clients move over their deposits simply from their high yield savings account that we have here into our brokerage or our RIA or wealth managed accounts, we would give them special pricing or relationship pricing on the wealth management fees that we charge, to not only reward loyalty, but also to retain assets at our firm so we don't have a huge amount of net outflows when ultimately rates go down over the next year or two. So those are some of the ideas, that I have the ability to bring up with our executive leadership team and help drive strategy based on BI and insights that I'm currently producing.
Right. Awesome. Yeah, I think it sounds like, I guess, BI really is shaping that strategy, and beyond is it's all based on kind of this data foundation and visualizations. Because
Right.
that's what you ultimately need to make decisions. I think we're almost at kind of time to end, but I'd love to hear kind of your last thoughts, or I guess closing words on what is the future of BI analytics and where do you kind of see the direction of the world going?
Yeah. It's definitely this like prompting world where instead of like vibe coding, it'd be vibe BI or vibe analytics, where like enterprises would have all their data either built out in a model or like some semantic layer where you could run AI on it. And instead of dragging and dropping, building out analytics and visualization from scratch, you'll simply just go into a prompt and say, hey, over the past trailing 13 months or 13 weeks, I want to see the number of mortgage applications received, the amount of time that mortgage applications have to go from received to funding, who's contributing to the number of mortgages that we originate, and then the total value of mortgages that we've originated over the past trailing 13 weeks or months, whatever time frame a business user would want to see. Prompt, like enter that in the prompt, and then the AI tool will ultimately, create the nice visualizations, the graphs, the charts, the tables, in a dashboard format or layout. And probably the user would maybe have to do 2, 3, 4, a couple of iteration cycles and feedback to the prompt. But ultimately, they would get to a point where they could through AI and prompting build out their own analytics and data visualization and self-service their own business needs versus coming to like a dedicated BI team or a data science team to build out the models and underlying data and the visualization. But in order to get there, I think there definitely has to be a lot of work. Data foundation, data strategy, like data infrastructure is very messy at large scale enterprises. So I think getting that right first is the first step. But then ultimately in the future, maybe, I don't know, AI is moving at like such a quick pace. I was gonna say 5 years, but maybe even sooner than that, maybe 2 to 3 years, where we'll start just doing our own BI via prompting, leveraging an AI tool.
Right. Have you played with the talk to your data at all in Microsoft Fabric?
I have
It's
not.
okay, yeah. It's almost like exactly what you described of is like, hey, I want X forecast, or can you go pull the history, figure out what tables it lives in and other things. But I think, like, to your point is like, there's still so much junk in the systems. It's like, okay,
Right.
if a business user, it takes 10 meetings to sort out which one's the right source of truth, or why did someone name this column V1 underscore 9?
Yeah,
It has
exactly.
nothing to do with anything.
Yeah.
Or my favorite was back when I was in the aviation industry, we would have North America as NA, and then NA
Right.
as like the default of nothing. And it was always so confusing, is like, is this North America? And like,
Yeah.
there all this route data would always be like confusing, off, causing issues. And like, there's no, I guess, the like metadata management's been around for, I don't know, 20, maybe longer, 30 years at this point. But it's like these same foundational problems still
Right.
exist today, and just like a little bit worse. I think the complexity of the enterprise makes it like so hard to implement it at the spot, but there's so much opportunity. And I feel like as you get kind of little data pockets that are well documented, put together, everyone understands, like, that's where this can really be unlocked productivity. But I see it like kind of deployed in pockets, not at scale across the board, because you wouldn't do that with people today. You wouldn't hire 100 people and say, here's open access, just start and go get the results.
Nice. I think you perfectly summed it up.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks so much, Amir, for joining us today. We really appreciate your time and running through.
Likewise, very honored to be here. This is my first podcast, so hope to do more of these.
Yeah, hopefully you have a full career of many of these.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, as you can tell through like the collapse of a bank and being acquired by another bank, I mean, your career is definitely not linear. It's very cyclical in nature. So we'll see where my career ends up taking me.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks again for joining.
Appreciate it, Logan. Thank you.